Good afternoon, Charlie. How are we doing, my man?
Hello, Ross. How are you? How's the weather?
A lot better than it was supposed to be. We were supposed to get this hurricane, and it just kind of barely glanced. I think the worst of it was yesterday morning when I was at softball with Amelia.
Yeah,
and it was pretty breezy, but today has been very calm, and we're very lucky that thing missed us. It wasn't the biggest hurricane or the most dangerous hurricane in the world, but it could have made a bit of a mess. So hopefully our friends down in the Bahamas are doing all right. Obviously, still recovering from that one a couple of years ago. But yeah, no, we're lucky. So I think this is episode 10, Charlie.
Yes,
is it not? It's appropriate for the referee episode in that they'll be telling you to get back 10. We're forward 10 now. 10 episodes in to talking Florida rugby occasionally, the number one rugby podcast in the world, hosted by an Englishman and a Uruguayan. For sure. I don't think there's any other podcasts that are hosted by an Englishman and a Uruguayan. So I'm not saying anything out of ordinary here. Again, my name's Ross Davenport, Florida rugby referee, assigner, fatback at Rugby ATL Color, commentator. I'm joined as always by my faithful producer, Charlie Velasquez, who has a new computer, I hear.
Yes,
so hopefully we don't have any crashing today that we had last week. I think we lost him for a little while. He may have the fastest computer in the 305. But we'll get to our guests in a second here. We have three current they do still referee. We have three current referees. Two are on the board of the FRRA, and one who is a young and up-and-coming referee. We'll talk to him a little about his story. But before we get to that, we obviously have our three quick things to knock out here. What's going on in the rugby world? One of those three quick things is not that we're back playing here at all, but the World Rugby have decided to scrap the Sevens series till 2021. So no Sevens for them until the new year. I assume it's going to be pretty much similar across the USA. Certain spots maybe perhaps we'll be able to open a tournament, but certainly not in Florida. And I don't think they'll be wanting anybody from Florida visiting their tournament with the way things are going at the moment down here. So, yeah, those are the two events in Dubai and Cape Town, which were due to be the first two rounds of next season's. Obviously, their season runs similar to the actual rugby season fall through the spring. So they were originally scheduled for late November and late December, but they'll be pushed back now probably towards the end of the season if they do get started in 2021.
Let me mention one thing about Sevens, that as we're not going to have any tournaments, there's a very good series on YouTube called 24 Sevens, I think. It's done by World Rugby, and it's like, they get each tournament of this past season and they go backstage.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. It's women's and men. It's very well done and very interesting. So in absence of real tournaments, we just have to go back and watch the old ones, I guess.
Yeah, you got to do what you can do. Obviously, Super Rugby's still going on at the moment in New Zealand and Australia, although I'm a couple of weeks behind. I did see my Highlanders lost last night, so I decided not to watch that just yet. I still haven't watched their big comeback win yet, but I'll definitely catch up.
It was a good game. I saw the first half at least, and then of course, between the two halves, I fell asleep. So,
as you do, Charlie's a serial napper. For those of you that don't know, I'm very jealous of him that he gets to do this every day. Although he does it at weird times. But a typical 3:05, he's up till late, takes a nap, late afternoon, then up till God knows whenever. But our second three quick things is that the dates have been set for 8 nations and for the 6 nations. The 8 nations, obviously, they're still going to finish the 6 nations from this past spring. That'll happen in October. But there was all sorts of rumors flying. I think we mentioned it on last week's episode about Fiji joining the 6 nations, but instead they're going to have an 8 nations tournament, which will sort of replace the fall internationals. So there will be an 8 nations tournament. There'll be the original 6 nations plus Fiji and Japan. I did have the groups written down. I forget where I put them, but that tournament will begin. There's 2 groups of 4. That tournament will begin on November 14th and will happen 4 consecutive weekends leading up to the grand final on December 5th. So I assume that will be the top 2 teams, the top team in each group facing off in a championship game. So hopefully all things going as well as they should over there. Things are a little better there than they are here at the moment. We will get some live international rugby starting in October. Locally, we do have some local news. It does involve my Surf in Sevens tournament. I got an email probably back in June as from Birmingham Moseley RFC, one of the original sort of Premiership clubs when Premier Rugby started. So professional rugby started in England, no longer professional, but they're still one of the most well-known clubs on the amateur side of English rugby. They emailed me and said they were interested in coming over and playing some sevens next summer. So they are booked. Their flights and everything are booked for Surf in Sevens 2021 in the first week of June next year. So hopefully, as we have done in the past, we'll have a nice little elite bracket. I'm sure the Stormers will be interested in playing in that. And hopefully we'll get a couple more elite teams coming down as we have in the past with Mexico and a team from the Bahamas. So I'm from Trinidad, excuse me, not the Bahamas. So look forward to that first week of June in 2021. All right, let's get to our episode. We're going to talk. We had our first referee. Go ahead, John.
I have to remind you, you forgot about the sponsor.
Oh, our sponsor today is Nobody, because we don't have a sponsor today. So if you're interested in sponsoring an episode of Talking Florida Rugby, get in touch with Charlie and I either through email, Facebook, text, however you need to do it, and we'll take care of you. So I think we've got a fun episode coming up the next couple of weeks. I think we have a couple of fun episodes.
Yeah,
some young talent next week, and then perhaps some legendary females of the game the following week. That's not 100% set up yet, so I'm not going to get too much more into that. But our guests today are also legends in the Florida refereeing community, that is. So we're going to talk to two members of the FRRA board, the president, Roy Monk, and one of our vice presidents, Gary Nation. And we're also going to talk to a young referee who's on his way up the ladder, especially on the sevens side of things, Kai Martinovich. So welcome, gentlemen. Let's bring them in, Charlie. There's Gary, live from the center of Florida. Roy Monk, live from the sort of center east coast of Florida. And Kai Martinovich, I assume in Boca Raton, but I won't take any guesses. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Great. Thank you for having us here. It's awesome to be involved.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. This is the one time you can talk over each other, so feel free. But we're going to go around the room and ask a few questions, and we're going to talk a bit about, as Gary is on the top row somehow, I'm going to blame Charlie for that. I don't know how we put a Welshman on the top row, but that's okay. Gary, tell us a bit about your rugby background, and especially your refereeing background, and how you ended up in Orlando.
Well, I started refereeing when I started coaching youth rugby in the UK. I didn't really start refereeing men's rugby until I came out to the States, which came over in 2002. The initial idea was to stop playing completely because I was already 40 by then. And we moved to the only town in Pennsylvania that had a Division I / Division II team. And I ended up playing for them. And then coaching them. Sorry?
I heard that accent, and of course you did.
Yeah, I ended up playing for them and then coaching them. And then a great friend of mine, Terry Haas, said to me, hey, you ever thought about taking up the whistle? So Terry convinced me to take up the whistle, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. We'll get to some of your most memorable games in a little bit. Roy Monk, current president of the FRRA, and also is involved with Back 10, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and his role with them. Roy, talk a bit about how you got into refereeing when I know you came here a little earlier than Gary did.
Yep, I moved here in the early 90s and as a player and coach here on the Treasure Coast, and took up the whistle in 2005. So that was actually an experience which I will share. I was coaching at the time, and we didn't have a very good game. Unfortunately, I was, as a coach, was a little abusive towards the referee, and actually got sanctioned and given a 6-month sideline ban. So that night, I picked up the phone and called Jerry Fitzgerald and said, "Okay, it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is. I want to take the next course." And I haven't looked back since. I love it.
Awesome. You're obviously also as well involved with Tropical Sevens, which is now becoming one of the biggest sevens tournaments in the country. Obviously, unfortunately, canceled this season, but we'll get to that in a little bit as well. We also have joining us this evening, Kai Martinovich, one of the young up-and-coming referees. We talked to a lot of the some of the young referees that have gone on to greater things. In one of our earlier episodes, we talked to the likes of Killa Harrison, Haley Slaughter, Cisco Lopez, and Lex Weiner. Kai, tell us a little bit about your rugby background. Obviously not as extensive as the previous two gentlemen, but you talk about how you got into playing and refereeing.
Yeah, so probably, again, not as extensive, but I've been playing probably since about 5-6 years old. My dad and my grandfather had state cut, well, the equivalent of state colours back in South Africa, so I guess I was destined for rugby. Played up until last year. Picked up the whistle, when was it? Maybe, yeah, it was about April 2018. And reffed a game every now and then. And then it was Tropical Sevens last year, where I was introduced to Terry Haas, and I got invited to the CRCs, Philadelphia, and I was told I got invited to there. So I made this somewhat hard decision to give up playing, because I thought I'd better future.
It is the battle for for everybody on the younger end of things, when to sort of give up playing and pick up the whistle. But I think you'll find it very valuable. You can always go back to playing if you think you've had enough of reffing at some point. But when you get too old to ref, then it's hard to start at that. It's much easier now starting at the level that you're at. Let's Roy talk a bit about the FRRA, its role within Florida rugby, and the goals of the FRRA and you as president.
Okay, FRRA, the Florida Rugby Referees Association. It's been around for a long time. I took over as president. Where are we now? 5 years ago. Prior to me, Terry Day was the president for 28 years. So some very huge shoes to fill moving into the role of president. But our role is to provide referees for all rugby matches within the state of Florida, and help to recruit, train, and develop the referees to fulfill that task.
And how do you feel that's been going at the moment, the recruitment? We obviously, as a transient state, we seem to lose a lot of referees just because of the nature of Florida, and obviously as a result of that, we have to continually recruit referees. I think we've had some years better than others, but how do you feel the FRA is doing in recruitment at the moment?
Recruitment is tough. Kai hit it right, on the head. We want younger referees, but it's very difficult to get them to give up playing and commit to refereeing full time. Having said that, we don't just want younger referees. We want referees, players who are coming to the end of their career but want to continue to stay involved. They're as much valued as anybody else. So we'll take them from wherever they come. But it's always a challenge. Historically, for many years, when Jerry was doing the training courses, and then I took over. Historically, when you give a referee level 1 course, 1 in 10 who take the course will actually stick and become a full-time referee. And then we have the attrition of moving away. One of the 1 in 10 that recently stuck for us was Lacey up in Gainesville. And unfortunately, she's just announced that she's moving to the University of Sheffield. So off she go. So we have to wait for four or more years for her to come back.
Yeah, listen, a lot of people go away for greater opportunities, and that's one of those. She gets to play a higher level of rugby there, and perhaps she'll pick up the whistle a little bit across the pond.
Yes, we're arranging that for her, so hopefully she will.
Awesome. I know Haley Slaughter, one of the referees we talked to in one of our previous episodes, she just went over to Ireland and had an awesome time, and then she's been spending the last few weeks, I think, up at the ARPTC, the American Rugby Pro Training Center in Arkansas, and being there sort of referee in residence there, and had a blast. So listen, sometimes you got to go away to bring the experience back to Florida, and hopefully both of those young ladies will do that. Gary, as a development officer, what can you tell from their first game if a referee is going to be any use, and what do you look for as an RDO?
You can get a good idea. Generally fitness plays a massive part. If you're not getting to the breakdown, not getting around the field,
Yeah.
the chances are you're going to miss things. So fitness, you can't really train. You're either fit or you're not fit. You can start training a referee to look for things, at the breakdown, but they've got to get there.
No doubt about it. Obviously, some referees have played a little more than others, and I think that certainly plays a role in that. A lot of times, if you play a little more, you can sort of tell where the ball perhaps might be going, and adjust your running lines from there. But yeah, fitness-wise, you've got to have it if you're going to get to that top level. Kai, one of the fittest referees we have in this state. Kai, talk about why you made that decision to become a referee, over playing at your age. I know everybody has a different reason that they sort of pick up the whistle, but for the young folk like you, what made you pick up the whistle rather than continue to play for the time being?
Yeah, so what it was for me was I was in South Africa, it must have been 2017 summer, and my dad had just taken his level 1 course, and he kind of kept nagging at me to pick up the whistle and give it a go, and I was like hesitant at first. And I went to a course that Roy and Gary hosted. Also, it must have been January 2018, I think it was, with Richard Every. Went there, kind of just like got a feeling for it. Then in March, April, took my course, ref like the kids' games at the state champs that year, and then just did 1 or 2 sevens tournaments pretty much until the season restarted again in 2019. And again, like I said earlier, the CLC came along, and I thought, well, perhaps there's a future for me if I just keep working at it. And that's when I kind of just decided, you know what, playing's been taking up too much time. If reffing's the path I want to go, I've got to make a sacrifice somewhere.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I know from experience, if you're not at an elite level, by the time you get into your late teens at rugby, perhaps your best chance to see the world on somebody else's time is to become a referee. As we talked with the other guys earlier in an earlier episode, they all said the same thing. It was an opportunity for them. They'd gone to Dubai and all corners of the world, and hopefully you'll get to do that as well, Kai. Going back to Roy and Gary, you obviously moved here from Florida from the UK. What was? I'll go Gary first. What was your biggest shock rugby-wise about Florida and refereeing here as well?
The heat and the dryness of the field. I mean, I refereed up in Pennsylvania for probably 7 years before I moved down here, and that was just normal. It was nice grass. It was wet on occasions, but here it's just very dry, very hot. Play rugby all year round here, which is unique in comparison to the Northeast, because although you've got the sevens in the summer, you've got a distinct fall and spring season, whereas here we seem to play all year round, which is great.
And Roy, your immediate thoughts when you moved here, rugby-wise?
Actually, the biggest thing that struck me when I first moved here was that there was no youth rugby. There was nobody below college age in the state of Florida playing rugby. It wasn't until the mid 90s that maybe even mid to late 90s, we started the first high school team, actually right here in Fort Pierce, where I live now. And then a few more followed after that. But that was a shock to the system.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, youth rugby now, exploding at all levels. But unfortunately, that also means we need more referees.
Yes, it's very interesting to note the growth of youth rugby. I think it was 2 years ago when we, at the end of the season, when we count up the number of games that we have refereed throughout the season. 2 years ago, I think, was the first time that the number of youth games, and I don't mean down to under 10s, under 12s, I mean high school and JV, exceeded the number of adult games. That includes college and adult.
Wow. Yeah, we've obviously had to rely on some coaches and parents to be able to ref the younger age games, which isn't ideal. But I think hopefully we'll turn some of them into full-time referees down the road. Yeah,
and that is a goal when we do the referee training courses. A lot of people come on the courses just to because they're youth coaches. They want a little bit more knowledge, but they do pick up the whistle and referee the youth games for us, and that is a huge help. We're not interested in taking away from that. That's a massive job that needs to be undertaken. Only if they turn around to us and say, "Hey, we really enjoy this. Is there an opportunity to progress beyond the youth?" Then we bring them into the main fold.
For sure. Right, off the top of your head, how many referees do we have in full-time referees at the moment in Florida?
Full-time referees refereeing college or high school, college, and adult. We're at approximately 30. When you look at the number of referees that we have on the books, including all the youth, the people who part-time, we're at about 70.
Wow.
So we've got a huge pool. It's just getting people to commit to doing it full-time.
Yeah, and obviously certain areas of the state, lacking a little bit more than us. I know down here in the Southeast Florida, we have a decent amount, but then we've got certain trouble spots, up in the Panhandle and the Northeast where we're really struggling. Referees, luckily for us, are willing to travel, 2, 3, 4 hours to referee one game of rugby. Kai, talk about you ref some youth and some adults, and talk about refereeing adults as a kid. I think you were refereeing adults even before you got into college. Talk about that, how that went.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing with me reffing adults was my first sevens tournament, and it was actually my first game that wasn't like under 8s, under 9s, and I vividly remember that there was a player, I think it was on the Daytona team, that just started losing it on me. Just kind of shouting at me from across the field, foul language, and I was a bit don't know quite what the word. I stumbled on my words a bit. I didn't know what to do, but it took me a couple months. I learned how to build up my confidence, and I realized, you know what, I'm the ref in the field. I'm the sole judge of law and fact, and it's up to me. So I kind of just used that to my advantage and was like, guys, listen, I'm the one with the whistle. My decision is final. If you want to complain about that, come back to me after the game. I'll just take a step back and just keep playing. Game is yours.
Yeah, for sure. Was that the one in Miami? I seem to remember that was
yes.
the one.
Yeah, that was
those awful fields in Miami.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, fun times.
Yeah, I mean, we've had obviously referee abuse. Maybe one thing we can discuss here. It's been a problem. Obviously, it's a problem everywhere on the field to a certain extent, but I think we've had problems here off the field, especially of late. Gary, how do you think we can? I didn't put this in my list of questions, so I know I'm throwing you under the bus here. But when it comes to referee abuse, how can club directors and coaches help us eradicate this especially from the sidelines?
They've got to monitor their own players and monitor their own sidelines. There are a number of occasions where I've sent a coach from the field of play because it's the coach that's been abusive, it is difficult, but the coaches want to win the game. The players, they all get very excited, and people need to calm down and remember that the referee's a person too. And also, you got to remember, a referee's making a decision every 2 seconds during a game. They're going to get some of those decisions wrong, and you can get pound a pinch of shit. The one they're going to get wrong is the one everybody else sees.
Of course, and I can imagine if their fans and teammates started giving them similar abuse from knocking the ball on, that we'd certainly see it end. Roy, what are your thoughts on the abuse side of things? You obviously have been involved, with some situations where it's had to go to the next level as well.
Yes, there is a standard protocol in place for us as referees to follow when it comes to dealing with abuse. But the biggest thing that the union and clubs can do to help us, which the union are actually already doing, is making sure that the clubs understand that either it's the head coach or it's another nominated person, for want of a better phrase, a match commissioner for each club, who is responsible for the discipline of their sideline. And I don't just mean coaches and players, it's spectators as well. And a spectator the game can be stopped until an unruly spectator is removed from the park. And that it should never have to get to that point. If clubs will take responsibility for the behavior of their own sidelines, But right now, the protocol says that it is the head coach's responsibility. He is responsible for not just his players, but his spectators as well. That's why we need to have match commissioners, so the coach doesn't have to be responsible. And the union is working very hard to make that happen.
Yeah, as referees and coaches, we have enough to deal with, what's going on on the field, and have to be worrying about what's going off the field. So yeah, there's no doubt that the leadership needs to step up from each club and take care of that. And listen, some clubs are better than others at it, as we know. Some referees perhaps are better at dealing with it as well. Some perhaps just like to let it go, but we got to nip it in the bud when we can. Roy, talk about the hardest part of being the FRA president. I know you said recruiting is an issue. I don't know how much you hear from teams just complaining, obviously mostly when they lose. And we had sort of a feedback system for teams, but obviously most teams, when they lose, that's the only time they actually do it. So what are some of the hard challenges?
We have a feedback system where the teams can file a report through the FRU website, but most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time, my phone rings, or I'll get a phone call from Kerry or from Evan at the FRU level saying they've had a phone call from this coach. There's a problem, so I reach out to the coach. And during season, that's how I spend a lot of my time on Sunday and Monday evenings and Tuesday evenings. Probably by about Wednesday, it dies down. It's just is discussing different aspects of refereeing. But yeah, the biggest frustration is constant. Yes, we want to recruit. We've addressed that, but the development of referees is hugely important, but is very, very difficult with the numbers that we have, because all of our referee coaches, myself and Gary included, are needed as referees. So because we don't have the numbers of referees to do the games, we end up refereeing, which means we can't coach. One of the things that the FRU is working with us very hard on again is to consolidate games into one location. So there's 3 or 4 games happening in one location. That will allow a senior referee or a referee coach and a couple of other referees to all be in one location at the same time, which allows for a much greater development opportunity on any given weekend.
For sure, yeah, and just being generally shorter refs. If we talk about, as you mentioned, development, talk about some of the out-of-state opportunities that a referee has to develop their game. I know I've been to Savannah. And
yeah, we have a number of tournaments that we traditionally send referees out to. Savannah is one of them. Battleship in Mobile is another. There's a great high school tournament up in the Washington, D.C. area. We get invited to send a referee and a referee coach there each year. And throughout the season, we get different requests come in all the time. Do you have a referee available? Or sometimes it's, do you have a game available, because we need to send a referee down to you because it's too cold or snowy or whatever else up in the Northeast. So they need to send someone down here to give them game time. And so we say, yeah, absolutely. So we do a reciprocation and send them elsewhere. And we're always looking for those opportunities. It's how we develop referees. If you look at the 4 referees that we've had success with in recent history, Haley, Khalil, Cisco, and Lex, they all had the opportunity to travel out of state to get higher level games than are available here in Florida to develop their abilities. And the same will happen for Kai. Going forward, he'll be sent out of state when he's ready to do Division I level games.
Yeah, Kai, talk about some of the opportunities you've had so far, even in your short tenure as a ref, to go out of state.
Yeah, so I've had 3 so far out of state opportunities. The first one was, I think it was the last weekend of March last year for Nash Bash and the level 2 course. I would say that was probably more of a fun tournament compared to my other 2. The next one was the CRCs up in Philadelphia, where I went up as an AR and an in-goal judge. And that was probably my best experience as a referee, where you were just in this almost professional environment. You're just with everyone for the entire weekend, and that's kind of all you think about. That's all you're focusing on, all you're working on. And that was probably one of my better experience, or probably my best experience as a referee up to this point. And then the last weekend of February this year was for the LA Invitational. And that was a great tournament to be at. I forget how many games they said there were. I believe it was over 100. So you had everything from, U14 games up to college men and women, up to D1 men and women as well. And I found that to be a great experience, just seeing the different levels of teams from overseas as well. So it gave me great exposure, along with being with 100 referees from all over the country, and quite a few from the UK as well. So that's been a nice part of refereeing.
Yeah, no, some awesome experiences there. And again, you're just beginning your referee career, and that's 3 amazing trips you've got to take, mostly on somebody else's dime, and get to referee greater quality rugby than Florida. Not that Florida is bad, but we always hear that Florida rugby gets pissed on a little bit. But it's great to get outside the state and see different styles. Let's go back to Gary. Gary, you moved around a lot. I know you're obviously involved with the Royal Air Force. Talk about how that sort of helped you as a player and referee, getting out of your comfort zone as well.
I think the advantage of playing military rugby was that it enabled me to play all the way around the country. I wasn't limited to one team or a team within an area. I played in Wales, I played in Scotland, I played in Southwest England, I played in Germany. It just the variety of the players you meet and the different styles of play that you get around the UK in general helps you a great deal.
Awesome. And now, Roy, talk about actually, we did get from the previous referee episode, we did get one referee who emailed, I think I forwarded it to you, that watched the episode and said it really sort of encouraged him to pick up the whistle. And everybody watching this, whether it be live or on recorded, how would you sort of promote refereeing to somebody who you may be a little curious about? It doesn't matter what age, but perhaps not quite ready to take the plunge yet with the whistle.
Well, the first step is always to do the level 1 referees course. And as I always tell people, the first introduction when they sit down and we start the class is asking people what their goals are, what they want to achieve. And if they don't know, or they just want to stay with their club and pick up a B game here or there, that's absolutely fine. We're not driving people into this. We're not dragging them away from what they want to do. We're just providing them another avenue to remain involved with rugby, or to get more involved with rugby. So my biggest advice is just give it a try. Attend the course, pick up a whistle, do it at practice with your club, do a youth game. Until you do it, you don't know.
Yeah, we obviously talked about one of the hardest parts is getting people to stop playing. What is also one of the things, or some things that you think stop people from refereeing? Obviously, abuse we talked about as well. What are some other things that you think perhaps stop people from picking the whistle up?
Apathy. It's a huge hurdle to get over. They come into the end of their playing days, and they want to either coach, which is great. The state needs more coaches as well, or they just want to be an old boy and be a spectator and drink beer on the sideline on a Saturday and watch their old team play. Yes, we do need a certain level of fitness to be a referee. So they've got to be in reasonably good shape. But even if you just do it part time and pick up the occasional B game or the occasional game, until you do that, you'll never know whether it's something you want to do until you get involved. I refereed my first game, and from that moment onwards, I didn't. That's what I wanted to do.
Awesome. Now, Gary, on your development side of things, what is there any sort of one thing that you try to tell every ref to remember every time they step on the field, or one thing that you see again from those sort of those up and coming refs that make you really think this person could take it to the next level?
Yeah, the game's got to be fun. They've got to enjoy it. If you're stepping on the field and you're a pressed man every time, you're not gonna carry it on. But yeah, you've really got to enjoy it. I mean, to be fair, most of us referees do, though. But somebody said to me once when I first started refereeing is that when you used to strap on your boots when you played for a team, you had your part of the game and you wanted to excel at your part of the game. Well, being a referee, all you're doing is changing your part of the game. So you're not a referee, you strap on your boots and you want to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think having fun and ensuring that the players have fun, obviously within the laws of the game.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Is a big part of it. I think that's one reason I enjoy reffing is that I know there are some refs out there that people will say blow the whistle a little too much, or don't know the laws, and those kind of things can really frustrate players. And I think for me, just trying to give the players the best game that I can give them is one of the biggest parts about refereeing. Now, Kai, talk about how far do you want to take this refereeing thing? You're obviously now you've got to go to the CRCs. It's 7s versus 15s. I was going to ask you as well. I know some referees sort of get thrown on the 7s track and for different reasons, whether it's their pace, or their age. And how have you sort of dealt with 7s versus 15s as well in your move up the ladder so far?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's a very different game. I like both aspects for different reasons. I would say 15s is kind of almost the more cinematic version of the game. That's kind of the real show. Whereas 7s, it's just it's non-stop, just pedal to the metal. And I've liked that aspect. The fact that obviously I'm still young and fit, so I can kind of just be with the game all the time. And a big shout out to Terry Haas for helping me from Chocolate 7s to get up to the CRCs, and everything since then. That's been kind of massive help and really given me a bit more motivation for 7s, whereas before I think I was more focused on 15s. And then through him, I kind of realized, 7s is actually something I would want to do, and I would want to take it as far as I can, and just keep pushing myself.
Is there one bit of advice you've received? Obviously, Terry Haas, one of the biggest developer of referees, I think, in Florida over the last decade or so. We wish he would live here the whole year round. He's a snowbird, unfortunately. But Kai, what's the sort of best advice you've been given, either by Terry or by anybody else, about refereeing so far?
I think there's a bit too many pieces of advice I've been given over the past 2-3 years. I know kind of one of the last pieces that really stuck with me was actually from Tig in LA. And it was kind of just focusing on the ball. It was like, okay, this is kind of just one of the more recent ones, but it was, when does a referee not look at the ball on the field? When the ball is in the air or for kick. And then the next one was, okay, when do you actually look at the ball in the air? And it takes you by surprise when you get asked these questions and between passes. But probably one of the best pieces of advice, probably the day I stepped into the level 1 course, was just enjoy it when you have the whistle. And that's something I've done since the first U8 game I had up until the last game, which I think was Boca Fort Lauderdale, the first week of March before things closed. And it's going to carry on. So I can't give you a definitive answer.
That's all right. I know I threw that one at you.
For me to remember. Yeah, no, it's all right.
I think I remember. I can't think of his name now, but I'm one of those guys that's sort of very calm and reserved, and he always said that you're on a stage as a referee. You want to be act like you're an actor. You really get into it, give proper signals, and get theatrical. Oh, Simon Page told me that in one of my first games. Really, people are watching you, so you put on a show within reason, obviously. Now I know all of you are avid rugby watchers on TV. Gary, what's TV rugby is obviously very different than the level that we referee. What is one thing that TV rugby referees do that annoys you the most, that they maybe let go too much, or perhaps that they're too harsh on, that players in Florida should ignore?
But you got to remember that TV rugby is a completely different game to what we play and referee here. It's on the TV for entertainment, so you'll see referees let things go that within the strict sense of the law, you may try and manage out, or you won't let go here. So to me, it's, I don't know. One thing that really bugs me being an ex-hooker is not straight in the scrum. The amount of times you see it on the TV, not straight, and referees just ignore it. And as an ex-hooker, it used to wind me up a treat.
Well, especially now, you can put it under the hooker's foot. I always tell these scrum halves, look, you're getting the advantage now that you can put it under your hooker's foot. Please, I'm begging you, put it in straight. Roy, how about you watching TV rugby and things that you see some of our refs in?
I have to agree with Gary. It's the not straight in the scrum is so frustrating. And as a referee, coach, and trainer in throughout USA Rugby, I've never ever let a referee get away with it. So. It's obviously, as you say, TV rugby is very much a different animal. It's all about entertainment and keeping the play going. So a scrum is simply a way to get the ball back into play as quickly as possible. But one of the things that I said, not frustration, but we look at watching the rugby currently going on in the Southern Hemisphere. With new trial laws, and the biggest thing is actually not a new trial law; it's a directive to the referees to apply the laws that exist. Yep. At the breakdown. And finally, they're applying the laws that exist, and the game's speeding up. What a surprise!
It did take a few games for them to catch on, though. These players,
the first few games in New Zealand, there were, I think between 20 and 30 penalties, which is, for a referee, is a huge no-no, but they had no choice because they were told to apply the laws. Wow, apply the laws. What a concept.
I must admit, Roy, one of the ones that I was really taken with, and I actually really like, is the offside law. Beforehand it was make sure the players are not offside. Now the emphasis has changed. It's make sure you're clearly onside, and it's just a different way of looking at the same law, and it just makes it easier. If you're not onside, you must be offside.
Yep.
Yeah, Gary, speaking of laws, what are some of the laws that you see most frequently broken in Florida at our level of rugby? Offside being one of them, I would say, depending on the team. But what else do you see that sort of frustrates you?
Most offences occur at the tackle, so it's playing the ball while it's on the ground. It's not rolling away. It's the normal tackle offences.
Yeah, I think obviously being fit as a player, which we are in Florida playing amateur rugby. Not every team is full of fit guys. And I think the first 10 minutes, everybody seems to be pretty well behaved at the breakdown. But then as the game goes on, people are just getting lazy, and they don't want to get up, and they don't want to roll away, and they just want to mess around with it. So I think that's one of the big problems with it. Roy, what about you? What do you see at our level that one of the on the law side of things that are some of the biggest issues?
I think that is the biggest issue is the breakdown, and it's incumbent on it's not incumbent on us to coach throughout the game because we're not coaches. That's not our job, but it's incumbent upon for us as leadership to make sure that we're sharing that information, and that's one of the things that we've put in place, and again we're working on with the FIU. We've created the referee development committee, which is a number of the senior referees and referee coaches throughout the state. But we've included in that body 3 of the most respected team coaches in the state. And their input to us and our input back to them every 2 weeks when we meet is hugely important. And what we're looking to do with the FIU, if we're allowed to, with the way things are at the moment, is have a summit in September where coaches and referees are all together and training together. And I'd love to see that done every year prior to the start of the season, where referees and coaches actually get together on the field and work through different aspects of the game, the breakdown, the scrum, ruck and maul, line out, just different aspects of the game, what the referees are looking for, what the coaches are doing, and just communicate with each other on a regular basis. because we're all in this for the same purpose. When you go out there every Saturday, there's 31 people on the field and everybody else on the sidelines. And we're all there for the same reason, because we love this game and we want to have fun. So the more we can work together to get us to that point, instead of what I felt in the past, where the coaches and the referees are kind of at loggerheads rather than working together. That's going to be a huge hurdle moving forward that I want to work with the FRU and the coaches to accomplish.
Yeah, one of the best things we've had to sort of come out of this pandemic has been the referee development things we've got together. So those who don't know, the committee has a meeting every other Sunday, and then we spread out into our little groups and we go over, what the subject we were going over on the previous Sunday. And it's been, I think, a great help to the referees that have shown up. There's no doubt about it. Now, you mentioned the FRA working with the FRU. Talk about potential changes that may be coming with that this upcoming season, how that will change things at the FRA. Yeah,
over the last few years, I've developed an extremely good working relationship with Kerry and Evan, one of the things that we're looking at putting in place is them, and it's going to be out for a vote, I think, to the union members soon. Is including currently it would be me, but the president of the FRRA as a member of the FRU board. And the reason we're looking at doing that is not so much that we feel that we need to have a vote on everything. It's so that when the FRU board are discussing a certain aspects of the game, we can give them referee input. And equally as importantly, going the other way, is the FRU board can feel like they are more represented in what the referees are doing with respect to development, because they can give the board member feedback for the referee development committee.
I've got a question just on that. Right? Is there just any way? How would the union members just go about getting involved in that vote? Just curious.
The vote is one vote per club. Okay. So it's not an individual member. It's the vote will be put out. That a notice was put out by the FRU, and I think it has to be out for 45 days before it can go to a vote. But it will be a vote by the individual clubs.
Okay.
Members of the FRU, of which the FRRA is a member. We also have a vote, but we get one vote.
Got it. Now, Roy, you also have a relationship with Back 10, this organization that's sort of come into rugby over the last couple of years. What can you tell us about Back 10?
Back 10 Pros is an organization run by Phil Klavoric and a board and John Wells and a few other people. We make up the board. And really what Back 10 Pros is looking to do is to provide training and development for referees, another pathway for training and development for referees that USA Rugby was not able to provide, whether it was through funding issues or whatever else. Back 10 Pros has been around for a few years, but in the background. And I will use Tropical Sevens as an example. When I first started as referee manager for Tropical Sevens, I just was doing it on my own with no support other than the Tropical Sevens organization. This last year, unfortunately, the event never happened because of COVID. But we Back 10 Pros came on board with some extra funding and some extra sponsorship, and allowed us to develop what I wanted to develop for that tournament, which was a development opportunity. So instead of having just a bunch of referees and a couple of coaches, and the referees working and but maybe or maybe not getting some coaching, but just getting referee time, this year it was dedicated referees. We have 48 referees and 16 referee coaches. So each of the 8 fields had 2 teams of 3 referees and a coach. So the referees would do 3 games on, and then 3 games off throughout the day. And when they were in their downtime, they'd be working with their coach for development purposes. And basically the coaching side of it was going to be funded by Back10 Pros. The referees and everything would be funded as normal by Tropical Sevens, but the coaching and development was Back10 Pros. So that's their focus. And they do that at various tournaments around the country in different guises. But the emphasis is on another pathway for referee development. You're muted, Ross.
Oh, I'm muted. I forgot to I got to mute myself. No, I was saying it's always an opportunity that Back10 Pros is allowing, and it'll be great to see Tropical Sevens get going, hopefully again in Easter. Let's go around the room, do some fun things to finish off here. Gary, I gave you a question of your most memorable game ever reffed and your most embarrassing or funny moment as a referee that you can remember.
So I think the best one it wasn't actually a referee. I was the fourth official at the USA Chile game. So it was a full up stadium, ESPN broadcasting. I had a ESPN guy standing next to me saying whether he could kick off and speaking with the referee about substitutions. And it was probably the highest game I've ever done, and one of the most enjoyable. When it comes to the most embarrassing one, I was in the Northeast refereeing media, and I had just given a penalty, and I was standing in the 10-meter void, and the media player took a quick tap and started running towards me, and I tried to step out of the way, but as I stepped out of the way, he was tackled by the defence, and they both came crashing into my knee, and completely blew my left knee out, ACL, MCL. So the game had to be abandoned. Quite embarrassing, really.
Ken Hanley is one of our referees from Orlando, just posted on there to talk about. I think we've all done this. Is that you've awarded a try that was 5 meters from the try line. Obviously, not every field we get to referee on here is lined correctly. Some parks and recreations department don't seem to understand the concept of dash lines.
Yeah.
But
while Ken's on there, the other thing he's done is I refereed him once, and he red carded me while I was the referee and he was a player.
All right, Roy, around to you. I'll do this as well at the end, but Roy.
Okay, well, I have to agree with Gary as far as the USA Chile game in Fort Lauderdale. That was a great opportunity because we managed to get the entire board of the FRRA involved as the match officials, not 1, 2, and 3, but everything from 4 up to 8 or 9, 10, whatever it was that we had on the sidelines, which was greatly enjoyable. Most embarrassing would actually be as a referee evaluator. I was evaluating the referee for the college championship, Cal versus BYU in Rio Tinto Stadium in Salt Lake City.
Oh, yeah.
And as a referee evaluator, I've got the radio headset on, so I'm listening to the referee, but I've also got my voice recorder, and I'm recording what he's doing, primarily what he's doing wrong. Well, about 10 minutes into the game, there was a line out close to where I was standing, and the referee came over to me and said, "Roy, can you switch your damn mic off? I'm fed up with hearing what I'm doing wrong."
The whole time he was hearing everything.
The whole time but through the radio, I was transmitting what I was putting in my voice recorder.
Yeah, I know when we're getting evaluated, they're obviously told, most evaluators are told not to say too much at halftime, just because you don't want the referee to change anything in the second half. And obviously, he was hearing everything you were saying and probably changing it every 10 seconds. Kai, you've obviously had a short career so far, but anything that stands out to you on either of those?
Yeah, well,
again,
back to the CRCs. There was a game, I think it was Life versus Cal, and Cisco was in the center. I was in goal for that game. That was a fantastic game to in goal. Unfortunately, I turned out to be on the wrong side of the field for the first half, where I got absolutely no action, which was a bit disappointing for such a good game. But that tournament was definitely a standout tournament. I was lucky enough to be in the stadium for both Saturday and Sunday. So it was just a cool experience, standing kind of there, waiting for the guys at ESPN to be like, okay, 3, 2, 1, you're running out, getting into the field, or being all mic'd up. That was definitely one, my best experience as a ref. I don't know about embarrassing moments. I would say maybe Nash Bash, where I blatantly got a call wrong, and the captain came over and said, "No, it's not their scrum, it's our scrum." And I was like, "You know what? Fair enough. You're completely right. It's my bad." That was just, I don't know what that was, just like me blanking out for a second. That was probably a more embarrassing moment, having a captain be like, "Actually, you know what? That 5-meter scrum isn't theirs, it's ours." You've got a point.
As long as you get it right in the end, that's all they really care about.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, I was obviously involved as well in that USA Chile game. I think I was the substitution coordinator for the USA, and it was just amazing to just hear and see what happens when you're that close to the action. Even of an international game, even if it wasn't tier 1, but it was a very exciting day. I remember going to Lockhart and refereeing 2 D3 South semis was good as well. But I remember one of my embarrassing moments was out Sacramento. It was a big youth tournament. Well, I think it was the first tournament I'd ever refereed in. And of course, when you're refereeing here, you don't always bring cleats. Sometimes you just bring your sneakers because the ground's so hard here. And I made the mistake. I wore my cleats the first day, and the second day they were still a little wet the first morning, the second morning on the Sunday morning. So I wore my sneakers, and of course, the first try, I'm sprinting into the in goal and just lose my footing completely and call the try from my arse, which I'm sure most people may have experienced at some point in the past. But I still made the call, just from a little bit lower than I normally do. Before we end things here, I always like to have a special guest. So we're bringing in somebody that at least 2 of you will know. Refereed here for a little while before. You might not recognize him with the hair. He looks like Uncle Fester. Not that I can say much with my hair, but Jeremy Brown joins us. Where are you live from today, Jeremy?
So live from Rockland County up in New York.
Awesome.
Jeremy, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Jeremy, you refed here for how many years, Jeremy?
2012 through to 2016. I think it was the best referee society I've actually been part of. Very lucky, great bunch of folks, really supportive, very dynamic. And the most important thing is actually something which Kai said, it's all about enjoying yourself in the middle, and that's really what we all did.
And how has been refereeing up in New York compared to refereeing in Florida, other than having to wear an extra layer or 2 maybe?
Yeah, well, it's like Gary basically mentioned, you're only refereeing for maybe 5 or 6 months of the year. Then you have that huge break between the next games come through. I think the last game is the one which we have. It's the New York Sevens on Randall's Island on the 1st of December. So generally it's about 2 or 1 degree. So if anyone's game for it, it's pretty good fun.
Awesome. And now you sent me your rugby bio. You've been involved in some serious international games. Talk about some of those experiences and your earlier years.
Yeah, definitely. So while I was in Europe, I was lucky enough to be invited to 3 European championships. They're like the 1 week periods where you go obviously from Saturday through the way to next Sunday, and you're basically refereeing the top elite classes. So you've got the elite class all the way down to a 4th division type style, and there's 16 teams. And I think the highlight from that for me was actually not in the middle, but it was actually on the side when we were refereeing England against Ireland under 18s, and the guy in the middle was Matteo Reyno. So it's good meeting Matteo, and yeah,
he's obviously gone a long way with his international career. Talk about your refereeing experience in Florida a little bit. I remember, I don't know if you remember what was the first ever game you refereed in Florida? Do you remember?
I think it was the Tridents against Miami, I think. So it was nice and local, I remember when I found out who it was, Jerry gave me a big smirk, said, okay, you've got a really easy game. And lo and behold, but yeah, I think the game which I'll most remember is the Orlando Fort Lauderdale game for no specific reason, and also all of the games.
I think I know the reason, but we won't get into it.
And all of the games also which we had when we in the Miami area, and also the road trips up to Daytona, and the road trips across to Tampa. Now it's just very, 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 very good time in the middle. Really enjoyed it.
I do remember you turning up to referee the FAU alumni game, which must have been the first year you were here. And of course, I kind of run the show for the Alumni Foundation. You came up to me and asked me where the changing rooms were.
That's right. Yes, you're correct. That was the first time I repped.
That might be the first game.
Remember? Shirt and tie and the jacket.
I said to you, well, welcome to Florida. Most places don't really have change rooms, I said, but there's a bathroom over there. And of course, the bathroom at the FAU rugby field, for those of you that play there, is not the biggest or nicest in the world. There are some public parks that do have some really big and nice ones, but this one isn't. I said, well, you can get changed over there. That's about all we've got. But you took it like a trooper and got used to Florida rugby very quickly.
Yeah, and I'll definitely have to sort of like back what was said earlier on about the difficulties of moving from Europe and coming over here is actually that tremendous stuffy, very heavy humidity and the dryness and the sun. And I think the first time I went to do one of the Sevens tournaments just outside in Gainesville, and there were two halves of 20 minutes, I think. And I was knackered by the first 15 minutes because, the heat, and it was just very, very different, very different.
For sure. Gentlemen, any words for Jeremy before we let him go? Welcome to Team Bold, by the way. Good decision.
Yeah, when are you moving back to Florida, Jeremy?
Well, I'll be,
I keep hearing rumors.
Keep hearing rumors. It's not through lack of wanting, put it that way. So
Do I need to speak to it or your organization?
Well, you're obviously always welcome. I think we were going to have you come down. Did you reference it last year, or you were going to come down and something happened at the last minute? I can't remember.
That's right. I was going to come down and for a weekend, but I had to go on a work trip a couple of weeks beforehand. Yeah, but definitely, at the moment, I think the last time I put my boots on was maybe last October, and I think before. Thanks, Ken. And I think even before. I even volunteer. I have to make sure my boots still fit me, so.
Well, any words of advice for Kai? He's a young up-and-coming referee in here with us today who I don't think you would have seen referee, but making his way quickly up the ladder. Somebody who's at a decent level. What sort of advice would you have for Kai?
Well, he's sort of pretty much touched on most of them. It's the most important thing is just to have fun and make the decisions and stand totally behind them. And one of the hardest things, which you actually did, is actually for a ref suddenly to realize that they've made a mistake. And, there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I've made a mistake, let's go on. It's all about gaining confidence, gaining the trust from the players. So good stuff. Good for you, mate.
For sure. Yeah, those of us that have friends that have sort of made their way up the ladder, especially in the USA, know that at some points it doesn't become fun because of politics, and obviously people make decisions that are out of your hands, for getting this game or that game. But I think as long as you keep the big picture in focus and understand that you're there to make the game better, and no matter the case, and no matter whatever game you're getting, go out there and have some fun. Mm-hmm. Well, gentlemen, appreciate you joining us this evening. Hopefully we get a couple more people watching this and want to pick up the whistle and fill in the gaps. Any last words from anybody before we head out?
Only, if there is anybody out there watching this or watching this in the future that is interested in refereeing, reach out to me, Gary, Ross, or any referee in your area. They'll pass you on to me, and we'll get you hooked up on the next level 1 course.
Yeah, what's the sort of next word on when courses may resume, Roy? Because obviously at the moment
we don't have one at this point. The education department as a whole comes under the auspices of USA Rugby, and as USA Rugby has yet to emerge, the education department is on hold, and we are actually not allowed to do any educational classes at the moment. Beyond COVID, we're just not allowed to do anything.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a while till we can hold these classes, but we'll obviously stay tuned on Facebook. There's obviously plenty of places on there with the FRA and the rugbyfl.com. We'll let everybody know, when the next level 1 course is. We'd love to see as many people there as possible, and hopefully as many of them taking up the whistle full time as possible. Well, Gary, Roy, and his menagerie of animals appear behind him. We've had 2 cats and a dog.
2 cats and a dog, all trying to tell me it's feeding time.
Ah, exactly. Kai, thanks for joining us. And Jeremy is also just appreciate you joining us all the way from New York. And we'll have to do this again soon. Hopefully, we'll see you out on the pitch again soon. We'll have another episode of Talking Florida Rugby next Sunday. We'll talk to some young on the field playing talents that have sort of taken their skills outside of the state and how that's gone for them, and even outside of the country. So join us next week for that at 4 p.m. on Sunday, as always. And you can always catch up with Talking Florida Rugby via the podcast method if you're driving to work or driving home from work. Available on all podcast platforms. And obviously, every episode of Talking Florida Rugby is available on YouTube at rugbyfl.com/TFRO. So Charlie, pop yourself back up here. We'll say thank you to you as always for the behind the scenes works. Thanks, gents, for sending us the photos and for
thank you, Charlie.
Sunday evening. I'll see you,
Charlie.
see a couple of you in about 55 minutes for our bi-weekly FRA call. And thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
All right.
You guys
Thank you,
take
guys.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye.
Thanks, Ed. Take it easy.